the Tax Dividend Program, the City of Farmers Branch, Texas.
Thank you, and good afternoon. We are honored to be here today, and we're excited to share the Tax Dividend Program with you. During the economic upturn of the mid-1990s, Farmers Branch, like other cities, saw significant growth in revenues that resulted in surpluses. While some citizens saw the surplus and expressed a desire for meaningful tax relief, some interest groups requested expanded services. The challenge for the city was how to address the demand for tax relief while maintaining an appropriate level of service in a financially responsible manner. We found that the traditional taxing and spending tools did not offer satisfactory solutions to this dilemma.
The city undertook a review of municipal finance. We found that the current financial tools available to public officials today were inadequate to address the challenges. Finding the public sector tools inadequate, the city turned conceptually to the private sector practice of declaring a dividend. Under the Farmers Branch program, the financial, service, and capital objectives of the city are evaluated after an audit. In the event a surplus occurs and the financial, service, and capital needs of the city are met, a portion of the surplus is returned to taxpayers in the form of dividend checks. There is a natural tendency among governments to increase services to meet the needs of the community and to spend whatever revenues are projected. The dividend concept allows a government to consider returning revenue to taxpayers as a viable and immediate alternative to increased spending. The dividend plan is fair and equitable. Money is returned in proportion to taxes paid. The dividend comes from existing available surpluses after defined objectives are met. In contrast, a tax reduction is prospective and reliant on both elastic and inelastic future revenues. Additionally, a tax reduction may only marginally affect a mortgage escrow payment. Tax cut decisions are political in nature and generally require no formal analysis before being approved. A dividend check is immediate and measurable. Dividend checks are mailed directly to the taxpayer, not their escrow account. When citizens receive their check, they began to understand exactly what they paid for city services. This is important in that the taxpayer did not previously differentiate taxes paid in a combined tax bill that included city, county, and school taxes. The dividend program eliminated pressure to reduce taxes. Since the dividend plan was implemented 3 years ago, there have been no demands for tax rate reduction. The principles upon which the tax dividend program has been based, good finance, good management, and good citizen relations, are applicable to all governments regardless of size, location, or level, whether it be local, state, or federal.
In a broader sense, the dividend program has an impact on the basic relationship between government and taxpayers. The level of public knowledge and discussion has been elevated. At community meetings, the city reports its financial condition, and the community discusses its success in achieving its objectives. Residents compare dividend returns with purchase of additional services, and perhaps a true indication of a community's understanding of finances and the tax dividend program was when citizens overwhelmingly supported foregoing a third dividend in order for the city to meet its capital objectives. The city has shown that it does not need to spend every dollar taken in. The dividend has made citizens feel they have ownership within the city. It is not unusual to hear a resident brag about the dividend program to residents of other cities. Just 2 weeks ago, a senior citizen told the city council he wanted to be a volunteer for the city, in part because he had received 2 dividend checks. Businesses expressed increased respect for government and responded by increasing community participation. In the first year, the recipient of the largest check, some $15,000, immediately pledged their dividend to a privately funded program administered by the city that provides scholarships to underprivileged children. Other taxpayers, large and small, contributed their dividend to social service organizations, to purchase computers for schools, and for other worthy causes. But the use of the dividend was really the taxpayer's choice. One resident wanted to know how much their dividend would be, and they told us they were having dinner around the city, and they wanted to know whether they could have hamburgers or steaks. The community has enjoyed the freedom to really choose where their dollars are spent. Finally, the dividend program has given Farmers Branch citizens a sense of trust in government. The dividend program has offered them a fresh perspective on their government, one in which they feel they have a sense of pride and a sense of ownership, one where citizens are actively involved. The dividend program has provided evidence that disproves a belief that government spends every dollar available to them. The dividend program illustrates to our citizens that government can be fiscally responsible and responsive to community needs. This program has made significant strides in changing the way our citizens view their governments.
Thank you. Ed Doran.
Can I get a sense of scale here? What's the range of one of these dividend checks?
The dividend checks were in direct proportion to the property taxes paid. The first year it was at 4.5% of the property taxes paid. The second year it was 5%. So the dividend checks ranged from a minimum, I think, of $1. There was no check sent out for less than $1, and up to, I think, in the second year, $17,000. The first year, the largest check was for $15,000.
How do you assure that the real taxpayer, the tenant who actually pays the taxes, gets the dividend as opposed to the property owner who merely collects it from his commercial tenant?
That was certainly a challenge, a legal challenge from a sense of equity, as well as a practical challenge. Clearly, governments, not just Farmers Branch City, but city governments throughout this country, focus on property tax. That is a tax that people want relief from. That is a tax that directly or indirectly all residents and businesses of the community pay. And it was that which we focused on. Sales tax, which is the other major revenue that we have, is by and large, because of our unique tax structure, paid by, in large part by people that are outside the city. They're not residents of our community, but come into our community to shop.
What's the percentage of your general fund budget that property tax make up?
It's roughly about, of the general fund budget, it's roughly about 45%.
And the rest is from?
It's going to be sales tax, franchise fees.
Does this in fact, if the overall tax impact, once you give back the property taxes, since the sales taxes then represent a larger proportion of your overall tax base, is that correct?
Sales tax and property tax roughly are about, say, 45 apiece, so they're roughly equivalent, and the rest would be other types of taxes.
But to go to the point here, once you're taking the most progressive tax and lowering that, is that correct?
We're taking the tax that the citizens had the greatest concern about, and we're responding by rebating a portion of that tax, but we have not changed the basic level of that tax. So if there is a need to have the full amount of that tax and not rebate any in future years to meet the long-term needs of the city, that tax is still in place.
Yeah, you indicated there's been no pressure on you to lower taxes as a result of this rebate program. But isn't there an incentive for you all to keep the tax in times of year after year of surpluses when you might consider an actual tax cut, which would affect across the board? Isn't there an incentive for you to keep it at the present level because there are, there's certainly from a political point of view, there's an advantage to being able to send somebody a check?
It is clear in our discussions with our community that this is an additional tool, not to replace a tax cut, but an additional tool that can be used. We know the economy is good this year. We hope it will continue to be good, but it can change. We do, in fact, have a plan. One of the other programs we have in place, long-term programs, is to reduce our debt, and we will be debt-free in the future. And when that takes place, we certainly will be looking at a tax reduction.
Have you done any citizen surveys to document reaction to this?
We have not done citizen surveys, but we do have community meetings, which we mentioned in our presentation, and we find a community responding both the fact that they enjoy the dividend program, but they respond in looking at the cost of services, something we never saw before. And we find that truly to be very interesting and helpful in our decision making.
What percentage of your residents are homeowners?
About 75%.
Any other cities in Texas adopting this?
The city of Plano has adopted a dividend program, and we have received numerous requests from across the country. We have 2 publications that we've written on the internet, so we know that many people are accessing that, and we get inquiries